Good day everyone, Michael and Ty down at Battlebunker TV.
Hello.
Good to see you all. So we're just going to have a quick talk about Malifaux, particularly about Rising Powers. Ty's had a pretty good read through Rising Powers. He's read all the fluff and he's looked at the models and stuff.
Yep.
I actually haven't had that much time to go through it, what with work and all that sort of stuff you have to do at the back. So I've had a good look at the models that I'm interested in. So Ty and I are just going to have a bit of a discussion about what's in there, what we like. So Ty, why don't you kick it off? What do you like about it?
Yeah, it's definitely a good expansion, adding some new options, like with the new henchmen, a couple of new masters for each of the one for each of the new factions. There's also henchman options available, which are sort of like mini masters in a way, but not quite. They're guys that they're expensive characters that can work with a master, but they can also, to a lesser degree, work by themselves with it, leading their own crew and their own special forces in many cases. I've got actually two favourites. One of them is Von Schill, who leads his own Free Corps mercenaries. They've got augmented clockwork armour, and they're like a really special forces, sort of like mercenary gang. They're flamethrower, and they've got flamethrower troops as well as the generic. And so the Free Corps are really good. I'm looking forward to them. They're coming out soon. As well as Lucius, which is one of the guild guys. He's like the general's secretary or something. Uses all the general guild guards and stuff, and bosses them around to do his bidding. But he's got some really cool abilities, and he looks like he'd be fun to play as well.
What Lucius does is he's basically a controller. He sits at the back of the battlefield and he can make them take extra actions. So once they're up in combat, he can make them do extra melee strikes and stuff like that. He can also make them better in combat, but only during his own activation. So they're good at striking, but only while he's giving them orders. The other new guild master, Hoffman, or C. Hoffman he's called, has a similar thing as well, but with constructs. He can make constructs take extra strikes as well. So it's interesting to see the guild have gone in that direction with a couple of controlling masters, because up until now, they've been really focused on doing damage.
Yeah, it's all about the combat.
The new Neverborn master is the Dreamer / Lord Chompy Bits. So this is a little kid who's been drawn into Malifaux through some shenanigans.
Yeah.
It's all about dreams, and basically he dreams into being this giant nightmare beast called Lord Chompy Bits. So this master can actually transition between being the Dreamer, who's a slightly ranged spellcasting kind of support character, and then can transform into Lord Chompy Bits, who is just brutal close combat all the way. Huge terrifying value as well, so lots of things are going to be running away from Lord Chompy Bits. Yep. His crew also have a lot of use of the bury mechanic, which is taking things off the board without destroying them and then being able to put them back on the board somewhere else. So Lord Chompy Bits' crew very much relies on hiding stuff away in this sort of space that doesn't exist and then popping them out in the middle of the enemy crew and doing a lot of damage there. The other thing that they've done is, other than the henchmen, which I'll get to in a minute, they've added in Nekima. Nekima's little sister. She's a 13 Soulstone model. Haven't really seen many models of that value yet. Nekima is huge. She's a massive demon princess. She and another new model called the Black Blood Shaman basically seem to have been put in to help out the Nephilim. Teratots mature into young Nephilim, and young Nephilim mature into the mature Nephilim. And they seem to have really put Nekima and the Black Blood Shaman in to really help with that growth, because it's fairly hard to do at the moment, and those models really help there. So the other model they've got is Kalotti. Kalotti is the henchman, and he's all about voodoo dolls. Kalotti is actually the surname of the guy who wrote Pinocchio, so there's a bit of a literary reference in there.
Yeah, it's not so much voodoo dolls. His dolls are more like, obviously wooden dolls, but there's the whole voodoo doll thing with Zoraida. So that sort of ties in a bit, but Kalotti's more sort of wooden dolls, but he helps out with the voodoo dolls because they're friends, doll partners.
Stay tuned to upcoming Malifaux events to find out how Ty is wrong. So what do we know about the Arcanists?
The Arcanists, yeah, so they've got a whole gang of new dancing showgirls with their mannequins, mechanical mannequins.
Colette, the new master, who's basically the leader of the showgirls, she is an MS&U agent. She has the MS&U trait. That crew is very much about manoeuvrability. Colette has an ability where she can use a soulstone every turn without actually spending a soulstone, because she has like a fake soulstone. And a lot of her abilities and a few of the abilities of the models that are based around Colette can also take soul stones from enemy models or gain soul stones through their use. A lot of her abilities also cost soul stones to use. So unlike in Malifaux as it is at the moment, where pretty much only masters can use soul stones, Colette's crew is all about soul stone manipulation. There's a whole lot of that stuff going on. It is a fairly complicated game, probably not a good one for a starting player, but the models are beautiful and it is a really interesting game as well. So as well as Colette, the new henchman for the Arcanist is Kaeris. I'm not quite sure how you're supposed to pronounce it, but that's what I'm going with for now. She's basically looks a bit like Icarus. She's got big mechanical wings, and she's got a lot of powers based around fire. At the moment, they don't seem to do a whole lot.
All the other henchmen have at least 2 or 3 other things that go with their special force sort of style of what they do, but hers is just basically miners and steam fitters assets.
In the background, Ty's read the story and I haven't, but her own background basically says sort of Ramos has brought her in almost as like someone to run PR for the MSU. Because she's like a nice guy with a she's got a vision for the future and all that kind of thing, and he wanted someone with a strong vision. Her abilities as a model in the game are all based around fire, and she gives things called burning tokens, which is a new rule in Rising Powers. She's the only model that has them, and basically they cause a bit of damage, and the enemy model can gain slow to get rid of them. So basically roll in the dirt or whatever to get rid of them. Nothing else uses them. Having multiple burning tokens does absolutely nothing, because all they have to do is gain slow once to get rid of all their burning tokens. So we've got to assume that in the next book, which is probably going to be called Special Forces and come out around January, February, early next year, that there'll be a lot of models that will have something to do with burning tokens, because at the moment they really don't seem to do anything.
Yeah, I hope so, because like she was one of the first models that also, when I've just looking through and I just thought, yeah, she looks really interesting. But then the more I looked into it, like trying to build a force for her, there just doesn't seem to be much to do with her. A very big change in the way the game worked. Basically, there was some spirits in the first one. Yeah, I think there was a couple. Yeah, mainly totems, I think. But yeah, now there's like a whole gang of them, and spirits are going to change things up a lot because of the way they work in the game. You can still hurt them, but they're a lot harder to hurt unless you've specifically got magic.
They take half damage against all non-magical attacks. So in order to do full damage to a spirit, you need to either be using a magical weapon or cast a spell at them. Casting a spell is not too bad. There are very few models in the game that don't have spells. Not all of them have spells that do damage, but pretty much everyone has some magic. It's just one of the core things about Malifaux. But having a magical weapon is pretty rare. There are a couple of crews that are pretty much built of only magic weapons. Spirits tend to have less damage in total, so a spirit will tend to have, say, 4 to 6 wounds, where a normal model might have, say, 6 to 10 wounds. But they do take half damage from pretty much everything that's not a spell. So it's a really big change. They can also move through terrain without any penalty, which is enormous in Malifaux, which is a very objective-based game. So they can walk through walls, they can pass through other models, all that sort of thing. It makes a massive difference. And it's because there's an entire crew that's basically spirits. Kirai, she's a young Asian girl whose boyfriend was brutally murdered in Malifaux.
Yeah, happens to be the governor's son as well.
Shifty nonsense. So she's pretty pissed, and she's going to do some throwing down. All her spirits are basically Japanese, Chinese sorts of spirits. The game looks really, really nice. The models are beautiful, and I've bought a Kirai crew, and I'm waiting for some of the new models, the Gaki and the Seishin, to add to it before I paint them. I'm really looking forward to doing that crew, because I don't have Resurrectionists yet, and it's something just really different. The whole spirit thing is interesting. She's also kind of like Nicodem from the Resurrectionists. She's very much a close support master. She needs to be amongst her minions to buff them up, and she does a lot of, unlike the way the Resurrectionists work now, where you've got to kill things and get corpse tokens and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, she doesn't really use.
When something gets killed within a range of Kirai, it comes back as a spirit, and she can then turn that spirit into a better kind of spirit. She also takes a lot of damage from doing this sort of thing, so there's a lot of healing abilities in her crew as well. So it's a very fine balance. Her totem is really important to her game plan, and unfortunately it's not on the release schedule, which we've seen up to January. The Lost Love, which is her totem, isn't on it, and it's super important to the way she plays. So people are just going to have to proxy that model.
Sounds a bit like what happened to Leviticus with the first one. How
None of his models existed until way late in the piece. So one of the big changes they've made as well with the Neverborn, that brings me back talking about spirits, is that a lot of the new Neverborn creatures are called nightmares. These are Lord Chompy Bits things. There are a few that cross over, so there are some that are, say, nightmares and woes, so they work really well with Pandora as well. But nightmares aren't living creatures, so they don't drop any kind of tokens either. They're not living or undead. Mm-hmm. So it's yet another category, just talking about spirits, it's yet another category of creatures that are very hard to deal with for a Resurrectionist player, because it's just another bunch of guys that don't drop any corpse counters. Yeah. Ty's already mentioned the free core as something he's really keen about. I really like the idea of the free core. I want to see the models before I make a commitment to it, because it's a good looking thing. Some of the models they brought out for Rising Powers, based on the artwork, do look really good. I'm fairly unabashed to say that there are a lot of Malifaux figures I don't like from the first book. They just don't suit my sense of aesthetics, and some of the models I think are just downright terrible. I haven't seen anything really bad from Rising Powers yet, either what's been released or what's in the previews. I think the concept art that's in the book, there's a lot of these nice line art sketches. A lot of the models are really looking like their sketches. So hopefully that carries through, because some of those sketches are really good. So the Outcasts, we've got the new Master Hamlin. Hamlin was a model that I beta tested the heck out of. He was my favourite new Master. I'm really disappointed he's not on the release schedule. Again, the release schedule goes to January. So I'm not seeing Hamlin till at least February. I'm kind of upset about that.
Personally, I'm quite glad about that. I hate him. I played a couple of small little beta test games with Michael with Hamlin. It's like, I can't stand him. He's the most annoying thing to play against.
He's one of the few models that's come through beta testing, or the last version that we saw in beta testing, fairly close to the way he's been printed in the book. Basically, Hamlin's a master that runs a swarm crew. Whole heaps of rats. There's all these tactics that you run so that whenever an enemy model dies, they become a rat. You've got these rat catchers, and basically if anything dies within 6 inches of one of those, or within 6 inches of Hamlin, they become a rat. And there are all sorts of ways of shifting around and killing your own rats to make more rats, to reactivate your rats, and all this sort of stuff. So again, like most of the Rising Powers crew, Hamlin's a new playstyle that we haven't seen yet. There hasn't been, other than some of the Gremlin crews, there hasn't really been a big swarm element in Malifaux, and now Hamlin really brings up that swarm element. So yeah, bunch of new Gremlins as well.
Speaking of Gremlins, yes, they've almost got their own little subsection now, which is good to see.
Yeah, they've actually done something which I think is cool, and split the Gremlins off into a separate section of books. So in the first book they kind of are, because they're all kind of at the end, even though they're out of alphabetical order, but they've actually put any sort of page in between, whereas in the new book they've just gone, this is the Born in the Bayou section, this is the Gremlin part of the book.
Clockwork Armor. Yeah, Clockwork Armor.
Book Escape!